Would you believe me if I told you that this man was 62 years old? Probably not. And would you believe me if I told you that this man's body was 38 years old? And would you believe me if I told you that for every year that passes, he only ages 0.66 years? This is David Pascoe, and he's ranked in the top 10 on something called the Rejuvenation Olympics leaderboard, and he's cracked the code on anti-aging. And unlike Bryan Johnson, who spends $2 million a year to get these types of results, Dave spends a measly $30,000 a year. So in this video, we're gonna break down the most important aspects of his routine and his lifestyle that any of us can apply to live longer, to live healthier, and to live better. And here's the best part about his longevity lifestyle. He is not calorie restricted. He is not a vegan. He doesn't even count his calories. He is not on TRT or steroids. He has cheat meals. He goes out with his friends. He has a social life. And all of this makes it much more attainable for us. Oh, and did I mention that he also drinks beer and eats pizza every once in a while? So first things first, let's start out with his mindset. I'm gonna read you a quote of what David says. He said, "I consider my body to be like a prized racehorse or a cherished high-end performance vehicle. I will only get this one, so just like any valued possession, I will treat it with reverence and I will invest heavily in its appearance, performance, fuel, care, and maintenance. I only wish that I knew and applied everything I know now decades ago." Dave is a big believer in this idea of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So in his protocol, you're gonna see lots of examples of how he builds resilience and his approach to hormesis and incorporating that in his life. The overarching important takeaway from his mindset is that he takes a high degree of responsibility and invests heavily into his personal health. And he doesn't outsource this responsibility to anyone else because he reminds us that no one is going to care about your health and well-being as much as you will. So lesson number one is to take radical responsibility for your health. That practically looks like is reading lots of books, learning about biochemistry and pathways and how biology works, speaking with many doctors and having long, sometimes painful conversations with them, listening to podcasts, hiring consultants, and doing everything you can to get your hands on the information that's relevant for you and that you believe is the most current, up-to-date, and accurate information. When we look at Dave's exercise protocol, it is made up of these different buckets. So first he does P90X and he cycles between the strength training workouts and the cardio. And then he finds at different increments during his day where he can fit in some yoga or some Pilates, make sure that he's also getting that flexibility and balance. In addition to that, a few times a week, he also does HIIT training and he does this on the 𝐂𝐲 bike. In random increments throughout the day, when he has a little bit of downtime, he's also playing with a balance board or on the BOSU ball or doing some slacklining in the backyard. And that way he can continue to work on his balance as he gets older, because that's one of the first things that leads to an eventual early demise is you losing your balance, tripping, hurting yourself. And then because of injury, your mobility starts to decrease rapidly. And when you stop moving, that's really when lots more issues start to show up. He also does daily rebounding on a mini trampoline, and I do that as well. And I made a video about comparing the different brands. So I'll put that somewhere up here and in the description if you want to go watch that after this video. The big thing to highlight about his exercise protocol is that he's making sure to cover all of his bases between the strength, the cardio, the flexibility, and the balance. When you're training in this way, you're training all these different systems, and that will lead to a long life because you need all of them to function really well. One of the big hacks that I picked up doing research for this video is that he leaves stuff all around his house, so it makes it easier for him to do these things throughout the day. It's almost like he's tripping over the BOSU ball as he's walking through the corridor where there's a pull-up bar. He's stacking all of these habits and makes it really, really easy for him to just get a little bit of movement in here and this way, get a little bit of balance work in this way throughout the day, and it's kind of happening automatically. Because when you see the item in plain sight, it acts as a cue and a trigger for you to engage in that activity. So let's talk about his food, which is probably the most interesting part. Dave's core thesis is around two ideas: nutritional density and nutritional diversity. So he has a combination of a Mediterranean / paleo diet. So he's eating a lot of greens, tubers, a little bit of meat, some fruit, seeds, nuts, a little bit of rice. When we look at the section where we go into testing, you'll see that he's very focused on making sure he's meeting all of his nutritional needs as much as he can from diet and then supplementing the rest. So an example of this is he'll have a green banana in the morning. Why green banana? Well, less sugar, high in resistant starch. It's really good for gut health, very nutrient dense. But then he'll combine that with his chia nut nut berry bowl. So it's basically chia seeds soaked in almond milk overnight, and then he puts every nut imaginable into this mix. Then he puts every seed imaginable into this mix. And then he puts as many spices as he can into the mix. And then a whole bunch of superfood powders like maca and spirulina and nutritional yeast and random health food store stuff that you have probably seen or heard of. And then a variety of frozen berries. Even though there's nutritional redundancy with all the different nuts and seeds, he thinks that there might be a synergistic effect because these are all different foods and we don't really know how they interact with each other. Even though there's a little bit of overlap, he thinks it's actually really good. In addition to that, he can store this in his refrigerator for a while because the spices have antimicrobial properties. So it won't go moldy or bad quickly. It can actually stay made for a long time. And the beauty of this recipe is that it's never the same every time. It's always a different ratio of nuts and seeds and spices. And so there's always a different flavor every week. That way it keeps it interesting and there's always experimentation happening. And this approach of making things easy, number one, and number two, enjoyable, it bleeds through everything that Dave does and eats so that the process can be very sustainable long term. And then an example of a common lunch for David would be a can of oysters, mussels, sardines, mackerel, and some frozen shrimp added to a variety of fruit and some bone broth and an avocado. The thing that sticks out to me here is that I just don't know that many people that are eating mussels and oysters and all that stuff on the regular. And the reason why he chooses these types of seafood is because they're lower in mercury. So from a heavy metal perspective, they're much safer and they're very nutrient rich. Dave is definitely on the early dinner train and usually eats between 3 and 6. All of his meat comes from Butcher Box, where you can get grass-fed, grass finished, organic, pasture raised, like basically all the healthy stuff that you would want when it comes to your meat. You can tell that this guy is a systems thinker because of the way that he structures his nutrition. He's using the Instapot. He'll throw like a chuck roast in there with some vegetables and some sweet potatoes. And then he'll also use this New Wave infrared oven, which can cook a lot of meat in a really efficient way. So you'll have that Instapot concoction. You'll have a big salad, and then he'll have some type of starch, like different varieties of rice or different varieties of sweet potatoes. I could be wrong, but I got the impression after reading his blog that he is on a lower carbohydrate diet, and if he does eat carbs, he's probably timing it right around exercise and modulating it based on how much movement he's doing throughout the day. Or at least that's what he said. When he goes out, he'll always aim for some type of low carb option, ideally something that's not fried, charred, or sweet. And this is the part that blew my mind because most people who are in this space would never talk about how they eat pizza or drink a blonde beer or something, anything close to that. But from what I read, it seems like if he has the option to hang out with people and they want to go out to dinner, he's going to actually prioritize that, being with people, over making sure everything's perfect. And in his words, he says, "Yes, I eat like a horse. I always order at least 2 meals and will generally also help finish off whatever might be left over from my companions' plates." So he is not holding back at all when he goes out to eat. He eats as much as he wants and as much as he can. He highlights that the big takeaway looking at his meal plan and all the components should be, wow, there's actually a large variety of foods that I can eat that are both healthy and tasty. Eating healthy doesn't have to be bland, restrictive, and joyless. Something else to highlight is that he does a lot of sprouting and he also home grows a lot of his vegetables and herbs. The major point here is that he tries to get as close to his food as possible. And he uses this raised vegetable bed system with a timer on the water so that he doesn't even have to maintain the garden really at all. It kind of self-maintains. Back to this idea of thinking of how can we systematize all this stuff so it doesn't take as much time and energy to maintain. Next, let's look at his sleep. As I mentioned before, he's on that early dinner train somewhere between 3 and 6 o'clock, which is ideal. That means you have at least 3 to 5 hours before you go to bed so that the body can digest all the food that it just ate, and then it can sleep really, really deep throughout the night. This is going to help with the lymphatic system, which is the waste system in your brain that clears out while you sleep. He's definitely optimizing a lot for his circadian rhythm, and I I've talked ad nauseum about that on the channel, so I'll put a playlist right here for you to go watch afterwards if you're interested in that type of content. But this has a lot to do with light timing. So at a certain time in the evening, he's going to put his blue blockers on. Lights in the house are going to shift using Philips Hue to a certain color, red, orange, to sort of wane him into night mode. And then all of the screens in his home are also going to change color, whether it's his computer or his TV. He also sleeps on an 8 Sleep mattress cover, which I've done a review about on the channel before, which I'll put up right here if you want to go check out also. That's a temperature controlled cooling mattress topper that will self-regulate based on the temperature outside and your preferences, and then it will change temperature as you wake up. So it's really, really good for helping you fall asleep fast and then stay asleep throughout the night and get the best, highest quality sleep while you're actually sleeping. So once he starts getting into his routine, he's going to do something that I've never really heard of anyone else doing, which is he eats 2 kiwis. So apparently kiwis are rich in serotonin, which can help regulate your sleep cycle and help produce melatonin. And so by eating kiwis, it might be able to help with your sleep. But then he probably takes the ketone IQ to stabilize his blood sugar after he eats those kiwis. And blood sugar has a huge impact on your sleep. So hence he eats this thing that spikes his blood sugar a little bit, but then he neutralizes it by taking the ketones. Then he does his skincare routine, and then he injects some peptides, and then he lays on this thing called the Beamer mat, which is like a magnetism thing that I honestly don't really understand. And then he prays and reviews his blessings from the day and falls asleep as he counts his blessings. The big thing to highlight here is just living a life that's consistent with the circadian rhythm and really sticking to an evening routine that works for you. Next, let's talk about how he approaches the environment and toxins. Dave filters the air in his house using an air doctor, but not just one, he has 8, one in every room. So this man is serious about having some clean air. Having good air quality is one of the most impactful things that you can do to improve your health. There are so many things in our air, especially inside, that contribute to different types of illnesses and symptoms. And by filtering the air, you're getting rid of basically all that stuff that can harm you. If you want to learn more about the best air purifiers, I did a review of the Air Doctor comparing it to some other brands, and I'll put it right up here and down below in the description for you to watch afterwards. He also filters his water using the 𝐷𝐿, which is a reverse osmosis countertop water filter, and I've also done a review about that, and I'll put it right here and down in the description for you to go check out afterwards. But obviously at this point in time, I know you know how important it is to filter your water, and then if you're using an RO system like 𝐷𝐿, then you get to remineralize it with the right types of salt and minerals. He also keeps a grounding mat under his desk, in his sauna, and on his bed. Grounding has been proven to be extremely beneficial in terms of reducing systemic inflammation and lowering cortisol and stress and promoting better sleep. But again, as far as the grounding mats go, there's definitely conflicting evidence to support both sides of if the mat itself can actually represent the benefits that you get going to put your feet on the ground outside. Dave is definitely being very proactive with limiting his exposure to environmental toxins and chemicals. If you want to learn more about non-toxic products, my team and I have personally vetted hundreds of products and aggregated all that data and put it into a database that's totally free. So if you want to get access to that database, just click the link down in the description. Next, let's talk about testing and supplementation. So I'm not going to go through all of Dave's supplementation protocol because he takes hundreds of supplements, but what I will do is highlight the biggest themes and the thinking behind why he's doing what he's doing. So Dave typically cycles off his morning and evening supplements every single weekend. Not only does that make his life a lot easier if he wants to travel or go somewhere for a weekend trip, but he just believes that you shouldn't be taking everything forever. You should always give your body a break, and therefore you won't build up any toxicity issues. His philosophy around supplementation is that he doesn't need to be militant about it. He can be relaxed with it because the way that he views it is that supplementation is an added bonus that's just going to enhance his nutrition, his life, and his longevity, but it's not a necessary thing that needs to happen. So if he misses it or for whatever reason he screws up, he's not going to get worked up about it because the last thing he wants is to get stressed out about his health. The second big rule when it comes to supplementation for him is all around testing. So he urges everyone to really get a baseline and do some in-depth testing to know what they're deficient in and then supplement and build a protocol based on the data that you get back. So I'll put up the list of tests that he does right here. So if you want to take a screenshot of this or jot down some notes, then you can. The big thing to highlight here is that with some of these tests, he's doing them monthly. With some of them, he's doing quarterly. And with some of them, he's doing yearly. Good part about what he's doing is that he's getting so many pieces of data that he can really build a clear picture of what's actually going on with his health. Whereas most people will do like one of these tests once a year, and it's just really not enough data to build an informed protocol to really know also what's working and what's not working. The other thing to highlight with his testing is that he's not just looking to get into the reference range, because the reference range is basically built off of a population of sick people. So he wants to focus on getting to the high performance athlete range, which would be, the top 10% of the population. The supplements that he uses focus mostly on hormone, mitochondrial, and telomere support with methylation and mTOR inducers in the morning and AMPK, suturin, and autophagy inducers in the evenings, plus brain, immunity, and intestinal support. So in addition to all the supplements and testing, he's also included some peptides in his regimen. Again, these peptides are specific to him based on his testing, his biology, and what he's currently trying to work on. So let's look at what Dave is utilizing from a biohacking perspective in terms of tools. So he's doing HBOT or hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which I've also done. I did a 60 session round, and I'll put the link to that video right here and down in the description for you to go watch afterwards. So my experience with hyperbaric was that it was incredibly effective after doing 20 or more sessions. If I was just doing like maintenance, doing a session here and there, I felt good, but I really felt great when I did these longer term sessions. From what I read and understand, it doesn't seem like he's doing HBOT all that often. It seems like almost like nice to have type of thing. He is doing it in a hard shell at 2 atmospheres inside of a clinic, which based on the research and my experience tends to be more effective than the soft shell. He's also using PEMF, which stands for Pulse Electromagnetic Field, which is a good recovery device. So he's using the AMP coil and he's also using the Beamer mat, which are both PEMF technology. He says that the infrared sauna is one of his favorite purchases that he's ever made in terms of investing in his health, and he tries to use it almost every single day. He cites Rhonda Patrick's data and the research that's been done in Finland as it being one of the best tools that you could use for longevity and reducing your all-cause risk of mortality. I've done videos about infrared saunas on my channel as well. I'll put the videos up here and down in the description if you're interested in that as well. Is utilizing red light therapy, which I love red light therapy. I'm a huge fan of it. And red light therapy is really good for mitochondrial health. It helps with your energy, helps with recovery and inflammation. And I've done a lot of videos about red light therapy, so I'll put that playlist right here and down in the description as well. He also uses this device called the NanoV, where you inhale easy water, and that helps with protein folding, which basically reduces cellular damage and strengthens the body's immune defense and helps with antioxidants. I don't know that much about it, but it seems interesting. The big takeaway here with the devices is most of the technology that he's using centers around these same ideas of reducing inflammation, clearing out waste and toxins, and improving mitochondrial function. This next one might be one of the most important aspects of Dave's longevity, which is his faith. Dave makes a strong case for finding a purpose outside of your work, and ideally forming it around something of being in service to others. And he believes that one of the best places to do that is inside of your spiritual community, which for him is his church. As I was reading through his stuff, he mentioned that in the past he was a bit of a loner and a wallflower, and it wasn't until he started going to church that he was put in a position where he had to be in service to others, and therefore naturally he was interacting with a lot more people, which slowly but surely brought him out of his shell. And before he found the church, he had this gnawing feeling that he had a God-sized hole in his life. And through this community, his family has become much larger than it ever was. In his words, he said, "It's all been a blessing beyond my wildest dream, because who doesn't want to love and be loved? It is now and always there will be thanks to my very large community that I will remain forever young, if not still in body, than in spirit. And the big takeaway here is to find meaning in a higher power and in service to others. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. It might be like, man, it's too late for me. Like, I'm not going to be able to create these types of results because I waited too long. And it's really interesting because although Dave was trying to live a healthy life, his parents got sick, he was working a stressful job, and he was running marathons and doing P90X. And the combination of all those things actually aged him really, really quickly. So when he was about 50, he went and did the telomere test for the first time. And when he did this test, he realized that he was actually, I think, 13 or 15 years older than his biological age. That's when he started getting serious with all this anti-aging and longevity stuff, is because he realizes he needed to make a change. So all the progress that he's made has really happened in the last 12 years. So from 50 to 62, he reversed his biological age a lot. So now he's at 38 instead of his mid 60s, which is incredible. So regardless of where you're at with your health right now, it's never too late to start. And Dave is a shining example of what's possible with dedication, some focus, some testing, and getting on the right diet, lifestyle, and training program over a long time horizon, and just being really, really consistent with that. And Dave, thank you so much for being an inspiration to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people out there. And when you see this video, please reach out to me because I've been trying to get in touch with you and I would love to make a follow-up video. So thank you so much for watching. And if you like this video, I know you're gonna like this video right here, and I'll go see you in that next video. Take care, be well. Peace.